Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Raven Sutton, and on the night I married Dwayne Mercer, I hid under the bed in our honeymoon suite with my heart beating like a teenager's. I was 34 years old enough to know better, but Dwayne always said my joy was what made me different. I wanted him to walk into the room, find the bed empty, call my name, and then jump when I grabbed his ankle. It was the kind of harmless prank he used to love. At least that was what I believed while my wedding dress rustled against the carpet and the last happy version of my life was still alive. The suite was on the top floor of a luxury hotel in downtown Dallas, the kind with a private elevator, a marble foyer, and a sitting room bigger than my first apartment. The reception downstairs had ended less than half an hour earlier. Dwayne had kissed me near the elevator and said he needed 20 minutes to smooth over a conversation with two investors and his mother before he joined me. I told him not to take too long. Then I slipped upstairs first, kicked off my heels, gathered my dress in my hands, and hid under the bed smiling like a woman who still believed she had married the safest place she knew. The most painful thing about betrayal is that it only works if trust was real on one side. Mine was. 3 years earlier, I had lost my mother to cancer and inherited Sutton Systems, the software company she had built from nothing. During those first months, Dwayne seemed like Grace in a tailored suit. He sat with me outside my first board meeting after her funeral when I thought I might faint before walking in. He paid to restore one of my mother's damaged voice messages and turned it into a birthday gift I wore in a locket. One night he stayed at my kitchen table until 2 a.m. reading contracts aloud because grief had made it impossible for me to focus. He kissed my forehead and said, "You never have to protect yourself alone again." Under that bed, I still believed that sentence had been love instead of strategy. Then the suite door opened, and I heard heels. 2 sets. I pressed flatter against the floor. Patricia Mercer's voice came first, cool and controlled. "Close it," she said. "The floor is locked down. Dwayne says she is still downstairs saying goodbye to his aunt and those investors. We have 10 minutes. Another woman answered, younger and sharper. "You said 10 minutes downstairs, too." My pulse changed instantly. I already had my phone in my hand to time the prank. The moment I heard that second voice, I switched to the voice recorder and held my breath. Through the gap in the bed skirt, I saw Patricia's red heels cross the room and stop. The other woman stayed near the arch to the sitting room in black stilettos with silver buckles. I knew then why she looked familiar. I had seen her at the reception, close enough to the Mercer family to be comfortable and distant enough to avoid questions. "Taryn, lower your voice," Patricia snapped. The woman laughed without humor. "I spent 5 years waiting while your son played devoted boyfriend to another woman. Do not tell me to be calm now." I bit my knuckles so hard it hurt. Patricia sat on the edge of the bed above me, and the mattress dipped. "You were waiting for a payoff, not a fairy tale," she said. Raven Sutton was never supposed to become permanent. Then her mother died, the company valuation climbed, and the opportunity got bigger. Taryn stepped closer. "Bigger for you. I am the one who had to watch him date her, propose to her, and marry her." Patricia did not soften. "And if you keep yourself under control, you will be the one wearing the reward." My body went cold. Patricia continued in the same dry voice she probably used to discuss catering and quarterly reports. "Tonight is not the finish line. It is the point where consistency matters most. Tomorrow he starts moving her toward what we need. The temporary banking authorization. The revised operating access. The committee vote. Small steps. No pressure. No mistakes. He keeps playing the devoted husband, and she keeps believing he is her safe place." Taryn's voice rose. "You promised 6 months. Then after the engagement. Now what?" Patricia answered, 90 days. "My lenders gave me 90 days. We need his access formalized before the credit line collapses." Taryn asked the question that broke something essential in me. "Does he mean any of it?" Patricia actually laughed. "My son means survival. He is good at saying what women need to hear. That is why we are here." Taryn sounded bitter. "He told me he is tired of waiting." Patricia's answer was colder than glass. "Then tell him to endure a little longer. Once she signs the next set of documents and his advisory role becomes real influence, she can cry about betrayal from whatever house she can still afford." They went on for several more minutes, laying out my accounts, my company, my grief, and my trust like items on a shopping list. When Patricia finally rose, she said, Raven will do what women like her always do. She will believe what she wants until the paperwork is finished. When the door closed, I stayed under the bed staring at the red recording line on my phone. The worst part was not the money. It was the precision. Dwayne had not stumbled into loving me and then failed me. He had studied me. He had found the exact place where grief and loneliness had left me open, and he had built himself a home there. Every beautiful memory suddenly tasted engineered. Even my happiest moments looked different. He had not healed me. He had mapped me. Several minutes later the door opened again. This time it was Dwayne. He checked the bathroom, the closet, the balcony, then stopped in the middle of the room. "Raven," he called. "Baby." He took out his phone. "She is not up here," he said into it. He listened, then added, "No, I told her I needed a few minutes. She might still be downstairs. I'm going back to look." He did not sound panicked enough for a groom whose bride had vanished on their wedding night. He sounded irritated and careful. Managed. Even then, even there, he sounded like a man protecting a plan instead of a wife. I waited until he left. Then I crawled out, stood up too fast, and almost fell. My reflection in the mirror looked like a woman dragged through smoke. Dust streaked the front of my dress. My makeup had split under tears I did not remember shedding. The diamond on my finger looked like a joke played by a cruel stranger. I wanted to rip it off and throw it through the glass. Instead, I replayed the first few seconds of the recording. Patricia's voice was clear. Terrence too. My name. My company. Their plan. Not everything, but enough to turn heartbreak into evidence. I slipped out through the service corridor and rode the back elevator down. In the lobby, I saw Dwayne talking to one of his cousins with his phone in his hand and concern carefully arranged across his face. He looked every inch the searching husband. He looked like a man I still could have believed if I had not already heard how little my life meant to him. I kept walking. Outside, I climbed into a town car and gave the driver Rochelle's address. Rochelle Grant opened the door in pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a question. She had been my best friend since college, and she had never trusted Dwayne. She used to say that men with no rough edges made her nervous because real people usually had some. I had called her cynical. That night, sitting on a kitchen stool with my wedding hair half fallen and my bouquet ribbon still tied around my wrist, I finally understood what she had been trying to save me from. I played the recording before I could even say the words out loud. Rochelle listened with one hand over her mouth. When Patricia said, "Her trust is the easiest part," Rochelle cursed so softly I barely heard it. Then she grabbed her phone and said, "We call Warren now. Not in the morning. Now." Warren Ellis had handled my family's legal affairs for 20 years. My mother trusted him with the things she did not trust to blood. He arrived in under an hour wearing slacks, a blue button-down, and the expression of a man who had already decided somebody was about to regret crossing me. Warren listened twice, once with his eyes closed and once while taking notes. Then he asked practical questions in a voice so calm it kept me from shattering further. What had I signed besides the marriage license? What role did Dwayne currently hold at Sutton Systems? Who drafted the prenuptial agreement? Had I ever granted him access to my personal accounts or patent filings? I told him the truth. Only the license that day. Dwayne had a temporary advisory board seat Patricia pushed as reassurance for investors. My own counsel had reviewed an earlier draft of the prenuptial agreement, but Patricia's lawyer sent the final execution copy during wedding week with changes Dwayne dismissed as formatting. Warren's mouth hardened. "Good," he said, and I almost laughed because nothing felt good. He leaned forward. "Good that they moved too early. Good that you recorded this. Good that he does not know you know." Then he gave me the first clear instruction I could hold on to. If you confront him tonight, he deletes, spins, hides, and denies. If you stay quiet for a little while, he keeps reaching. People like this get sloppier when they think the prize is close. Rochelle squeezed my hand. Warren added, "We protect your company first. Your heart can bleed later." I did not sleep. I sat in Rochelle's kitchen until dawn in borrowed sweatpants while Warren turned Betrayal into a checklist. Preserve the recording with metadata. Duplicate it. Lock down every password, approval chain, and data room at the company. Review the executed prenup, not the version I thought I signed. Assume Dwayne and Patricia would push for new signatures soon. Most important of all, let them keep believing I was exactly who they thought I was. "Can you do that?" Warren asked. I looked down at the ring on my hand and said, "I can do worse than that." I returned to the hotel just after sunrise. Dwayne was asleep on top of the comforter in his dress shirt, as if he had exhausted himself with worry. His phone sat on the nightstand with 3 missed calls to me and 6 tidy, appropriate text messages. "Where are you? Are you okay? Baby, call me." Enough to look concerned if anyone ever checked. Not enough to read his panic. I stood there and understood that even his anxiety had been branded. I went into the bathroom, washed my face, hid the damage with makeup, and practiced a smile until it looked harmless. When I woke him, he reached for me immediately. "Where did you go?" he asked. I gave him the lie Warren and I had chosen. I said I got overwhelmed, ran into relatives I had not seen in years, and ended up in a second room Rochelle's husband had arranged for guests. Dwayne studied me a second too long, then kissed my hand. "You scared me," he said. I was ready to wake up the whole hotel. It was so polished I almost admired it. Instead, I touched his cheek and said, "I know. I'm sorry." The first 3 weeks of marriage became the hardest performance of my life. I smiled through breakfast. I let him kiss me goodbye. I listened when he talked about the future as if the word belonged to us. At Sutton Systems, Warren, corporate counsel, and my security chief moved quietly. Dwayne's document access narrowed under the explanation of a routine post-marriage security review tied to our upcoming product launch. Approval routes changed. Sensitive files shifted to secured folders. His advisory materials were routed through counsel instead of directly to him. Nothing dramatic on paper. Everything important in practice. The board issue required more care. Dwayne had not been made essential. He had been made visible. 3 months before the wedding, Patricia sold him to me as a polished operations strategist who could reassure skittish investors while I focused on product and expansion. He was given a temporary non-executive advisory seat with a scheduled review after the wedding quarter. Warren used that sunset clause to trigger a formal governance review through outside counsel, citing attempts by Dwayne to access materials beyond his authority. The review bought me time. Time was oxygen. Dwayne noticed the friction almost immediately. On the 5th morning after the wedding, he walked into the kitchen holding his phone with a small line between his brows. "Did your people lock me out of the diligence folder?" he asked. I poured coffee like my heart was not trying to kick through my ribs. "Probably part of the new security policy," I said. "Everybody gets nervous after a high-profile wedding and a funding round." He watched me for a beat, then smiled. "Maybe you can tell them your husband is not a threat." Husband. The word nearly made me choke. I kissed his jaw and said, "I'll ask." 2 days later, he tried something bolder. He came into my home office carrying a leather folder and wearing the expression he used whenever he wanted me to trust him more than I trusted myself. "I was thinking," he said, sitting across from me, "there are some simple things we should clean up now that we're married. Emergency account access. Temporary sign authority if you're traveling. Basic spousal protections." He slid the folder toward me. Nothing major. Just practical. I let my fingertips rest on the papers without opening them. "What kind of authority?" I asked. Dwayne leaned back like the picture of patience. "The kind that keeps life smooth. Say you're overseas and payroll gets delayed. Say a patent filing needs a quick sign-off. I step in, keep everything moving, and step back out. It protects you." Then he smiled, soft and intimate, the smile that had once made me hand him my grief like it was safe in his pockets. "You trust me, don't you?" he asked. There it was. Not a question. A lever. I smiled back and said, "Of course. I just want Warren to glance at it first." For the first time, his mask slipped. It lasted maybe a second. His mouth tightened, not with heartbreak, but with irritation that ownership had been delayed. Then he recovered. "Sure," he said. "Whatever makes you comfortable." He kissed the top of my head and walked out with the folder. That moment helped me more than he knew. Patricia's recording proved conspiracy. Dwayne's face in my office proved intent. He had not been waiting for partnership. He had been waiting for paperwork. When Warren heard about the folder, he told me to write down every word while it was fresh. "We are building pattern now," he said. "Pattern wins." Warren also hired a licensed investigator named Calvin Hughes, former Financial Crimes Division, quiet and exact. Calvin did not come back with gossip. He came back with records. Business filings. Old apartment leases. A withdrawn civil complaint in St. Louis. A payment trail linking Patricia's company to a law firm that once sent a threatening letter to a woman named April Monroe. April turned out to be Dwayne's former fiancée. Calvin reached her through counsel, not surprise. 2 days later, She agreed to speak if her statement was handled properly and not turned into public entertainment. We met in Warren's office on a Tuesday afternoon. April was elegant, guarded, and tired in the way women get tired when shame is forced on them by someone else's lies. She told her story cleanly. Dwayne courted her after she received insurance money from her father's death. He persuaded her to co-sign an investment account he claimed would help them build a future. When she started asking questions about missing funds, Patricia framed her as unstable and ungrateful. When April threatened to go public, Patricia's lawyer sent a vicious letter referencing private photographs and defamation exposure. April left and went quiet. "I thought surviving him was enough," she said. "Then I heard your name." Hearing April's story did two things at once. It frightened me because it proved I was not dealing with improvisers. It steadied me because methods leave trails. Over the next 10 days, Calvin also photographed Dwayne meeting Taryn twice a week, sometimes in a parking garage, sometimes at a short-term rental Patricia had leased through an LLC, sometimes in Patricia's office after hours. The images hurt, but not the way they would have a month earlier. By then the pain was less heartbreak than insult. Every photo said the same thing. He thought I was stupid enough to finance my own destruction. The most devastating proof came from Dwayne himself, and he handed it to me through arrogance. He used a shared household tablet in our breakfast room to check email when his phone was charging. He assumed domestic space was safe because he assumed I was. One morning, after he left for the gym, the tablet lit up with a message preview from Patricia. "Call me before you ask her TO sign." I did not touch it. I photographed the screen and called Warren from the pantry. 2 hours later, his forensic specialist was in my house under the cover of updating our home network. The specialist created a lawful image of the shared device, preserved the login state, and extracted the synced materials properly. What he recovered made my skin go numb. Emails between Dwayne and Patricia. Draft language for the temporary authorizations. Calendar notes. Lender letters showing Patricia's company was inches from collapse. But the piece Warren kept returning to was an audio message Dwayne sent his mother 3 nights after the wedding. His own voice. Tired. Angry. Unmasked. "She is almost there," he said. "If she signs the Treasury access and the patent resolution, Sutton Systems is effectively ours. I can fake 6 more months. I am not spending another year pretending unless there is real control at the end." I listened to that message once. That was enough. There it was, not Patricia's plotting, not Taryn's jealousy, but Dwayne himself saying the quiet part plainly. His intent. His timeline. His contempt. The line that hurt most was not even about the money. It was, "I can fake 6 more months." Everything he had ever called love suddenly had an expiration date. Warren closed the file and said, "This is the center of the case. The rest supports it." I stared at the waveform on the screen and thought, "You should have just broken my heart." That would have been kinder. Once we had that recording, Warren moved fast. Preservation notices went out. Corporate counsel documented Dwayne's access requests more formally. My executive team shifted patent and treasury approvals to a 2-person verification process. Patricia kept visiting, each conversation more revealing now that I understood the language. She would sip coffee in my sitting room and say things like, "A husband should not have to ask twice to be trusted," or, "Men like Dwayne lose confidence when a wife keeps business walls up." I wrote down every line after she left. I stopped hearing concern. I heard scouting reports. The hardest part of those weeks was not pretending around strangers. It was pretending in private. Sometimes Dwayne would walk into a room with his sleeves rolled up, and I would remember the night he cooked for me after a product failure. Sometimes he would laugh, and I would remember him listening to my mother's old voice notes with me. That was the cruel genius of what he did. He had not built the lie out of cheap pieces. He had used tenderness. He understood that real power is not taken first by force. It is invited in by trust. Around the 4th week, Warren asked me what kind of ending I wanted. Not the legal ending, the human one. I knew immediately. "I want him exposed before he has time to build a story," I said. "I want Patricia to watch people finally see her clearly. I want him to feel what I felt under that bed when the room changed shape around me." Warren hated spectacle for its own sake, but he respected precision. So we planned a dinner at my house under the pretense of celebrating our first month of marriage and our upcoming expansion round. Business contacts. Patricia's social circle. A few mutual friends. Enough witnesses to kill the lies before they were born. We did not build the reveal around drama alone. We built it around proof. Each guest would receive a sealed folder after dessert containing authenticated excerpts. Dwayne's audio message, the preservation summary from the household device, the honeymoon recording transcript, photographs connecting him to Taryn, and documents showing the timing of his access pushes. Nothing that could damage my employees or expose company secrets. Only what established fraud, conspiracy, and intent. Humiliation is useless unless it closes exits, Warren said. Tonight is about closing exits. He was right. The afternoon of the dinner, I stood in my closet staring at a black dress that made me look more dangerous than decorative. Dwayne came up behind me and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Big night?" he asked. I met his eyes in the mirror. "Maybe." He kissed the side of my neck. "Whatever happens tonight, I've got you." I nearly laughed. Instead, I turned and fixed his tie. "That's what I've always loved about you," I said. "You know exactly what to say." For a fraction of a second, he looked pleased with himself in a way that made my skin crawl. Guests started arriving at 7. Our house glowed with candlelight and low jazz. Servers moved with champagne trays. Patricia stood near the staircase in cream silk, receiving compliments like she had won something. Dwayne played the attentive husband with his hand at my waist. Rochelle arrived in deep green and squeezed my forearm once, hard enough to ground me. Warren came early and checked the audio cue with our technician in the library. "One clean shot," he told me. "If he starts shouting, we do not argue. We let the evidence keep speaking." Dinner was served at 8:30. 32 people sat beneath the chandelier while silverware clicked against china and conversation moved in practice circles around funding rounds, nonprofits, and real estate. I watched Dwayne charm one of Patricia's lenders from across the table and realized his confidence was helping me. Fear would have made him sympathetic. Confidence made him guilty before the room ever turned. When dessert plates were cleared, I rose with my glass in hand. Dwayne smiled up at me, public and loving. "Speech?" he asked. "A short one," I said. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "A month ago, I married a man I believed had carried me through the hardest years of my life. I believed I was joining a family that loved me. I believed I was building a future with someone who protected me when I was grieving and promised I would never have to stand alone." Dwayne's smile thinned. Patricia's fingers stilled around her water glass. I let the quiet settle before I said, "I was wrong." The entire room changed in that one sentence. Dwayne rose halfway from his chair. "Raven," he said softly, warning hidden under concern. "What are you doing?" I looked at him and felt almost nothing. "On our wedding night," I said, "I hid under the bed in our honeymoon suite to surprise my husband. Instead, I listened while his mother and his longtime girlfriend discussed their plan to use this marriage to gain control over my money, my company, and my life." A woman at the far end of the table gasped. Patricia went white under her makeup. Dwayne's chair scraped the floor. "That is absurd," he said. "Sit down and let's not do this in front of everyone." "No," I said. "What I did not have that night was your voice. I have it now." I nodded once toward the library. The house speakers came alive, not with Patricia first, but with Dwayne. His own voice filled the room, stripped of charm and performance. "She is almost there. If she signs the Treasury access and the patent resolution, Sutton Systems is effectively ours. I can fake 6 more months. I am not spending another year pretending unless there is real control at the end." Someone dropped a fork. Someone else whispered, "My God." Dwayne looked not shocked, but hunted. He knew that sentence had ended him. The clip stopped. Silence cracked across the table. Then Warren stepped in from the doorway with 2 assistants and began placing sealed folders in front of each guest. "Those contain the materials referenced in Mrs. Sutton's statement," he said evenly. "No theater. No shouting. Just finality." Patricia shoved back from the table, so hard her chair nearly tipped. "This is illegal," she snapped. "This is a setup." Warren did not even look at her. "Everything in those packets has been preserved through counsel and examined by forensic specialists. Choose your next words carefully." Dwayne turned on me then, and for the first time I saw the man underneath the performance. Not charming, not misunderstood, just furious that his mark had turned into a witness. "You went through my things," he hissed. "You had no right." I laughed once, sharp enough to startle even me. "No right? You married me under false pretenses, tried to move me towards signing authority transfers, and planned it with your mother and mistress while wearing the tuxedo I paid for." He reached across the table for my arm, and Rochelle stood so fast her chair slammed backward. "Do not touch her," she said. Patricia tried one last spin. "Raven, sweetheart, you are emotional and confused," she said in that same syrupy tone she used whenever she wanted me smaller. "You misunderstood a private family conversation during a stressful financial period. Dwayne loves you." I turned to her. Your exact words were, "Her trust is the easiest part." I have them on audio. You told Taryn that after the next signatures were secured, I could cry about betrayal from whatever house I could still afford. If there is an innocent explanation for that, give it clearly. Patricia opened her mouth, then closed it. Several guests were already reading the packets. The room did not erupt in dramatic shouting. It turned colder than that. One lender removed his glasses and reread the first page. One of Patricia's closest friends folded her packet shut and stood up without a word. A venture partner Dwayne had been courting for weeks said, "We're done here," and left. Dwayne tried denial next. "That audio is incomplete. Anyone can cut a clip." Warren nodded toward the folders. Page 4. The transcript timestamps align with the preserved device image, related emails, and the draft authorizations. Dwayne looked around the room the way I had looked around the suite under that bed. Reality had changed while he was still using the old map. There was no rescuing him after that. Patricia called me ungrateful. Dwayne called me vindictive. Neither word landed because they were standing in proof of what they were. I told the guests I was sorry for the setting, but not the truth. I said I wanted the lies to die in the same kind of room where they had been polished. Then I stepped back and let silence do the rest. People left quickly, not out of discomfort with me, but disgust with them. Dwayne caught me in the foyer after the last major guest had gone. "You are blowing up both our lives over one ugly conversation," he said, voice low and shaking. "You don't even understand what you heard." I faced him under the staircase where he had once carried me laughing after a Christmas party. "Then explain your message to your mother," I said. "Explain what part of 'I can fake 6 more months' sounds like a husband speaking in love." He stared at me, trying on different faces, apologetic, offended, persuasive. "None fit anymore." "You should have come to me," he finally said. "You mean before or after the theft?" I asked. He had no answer. Monday morning, Warren filed for divorce on fraud grounds and requested temporary protective orders regarding contact, residence, and financial interference. 2 weeks later, after the forensic reports were finalized and Calvin's materials were packaged properly, we filed the civil fraud suit against Dwayne and Patricia. The criminal side moved on its own clock. Warren referred the case to the district attorney's office with the preserved evidence. That distinction mattered. One case was about ending the marriage and recovering damage. The other was about whether the state agreed their deception had crossed into prosecutable fraud. Corporate consequences came first. My board's governance committee suspended Dwayne's advisory role pending review, then formally removed him once his concealed relationship with Taryn and his attempted access requests were documented. His company permissions were terminated completely. Patricia's lenders, already nervous, got skittish after the dinner party packets circulated quietly through the very circle she had spent years cultivating. Her bankruptcy did not arrive in one cinematic crash. It arrived 2 months later after a bridge loan failed, a key account defected, and people who once trusted her stopped taking her calls. I found that more satisfying than spectacle. Collapse by consequence. Dwayne tried every channel for 6 weeks. Calls from unknown numbers. Emails routed through old planners. A handwritten note sent by courier, as if penmanship could make dishonesty intimate. I gave everything to Warren unopened. Patricia sent mutual friends to tell me she had been desperate, that as a businesswoman I should understand pressure, that no actual theft had happened yet. As if attempted destruction should count as tenderness because she had not finished. Warren said something then that I never forgot. Conspiracy reveals itself by its excuses. Listen to how people explain the harm they meant to cause. The first hearing on the divorce petition was procedural, not cinematic, and I appreciated that more than I expected. No speeches. No thunder. Just lawyers, exhibits, and a judge moving carefully through temporary restrictions, financial non-interference, and exclusive use of the house pending the case because the property had been mine before the marriage and the fraud allegations were strongly supported. Dwayne sat 3 seats away in a navy suit I had paid for. He did not look remorseful. He looked offended that the system had stopped admiring him long enough to read. Outside the courthouse, he called my name. "Raven, please. 5 minutes. You owe me that." I turned only enough for him to know I had heard. No, I said. What I owed my husband, I gave. You gave that man away for money. Then I got into Warren's car and left. My hands shook for 10 minutes afterward. Not because I missed him, because the body does not learn betrayal at the same speed the mind does. My nerves still remembered love even after my judgment had buried it. The district attorney's office moved more carefully than the civil court, and months passed before the criminal case became public. Investigators interviewed April. They reviewed Patricia's lender correspondence, the draft authorization forms, the household device extraction, the honeymoon recording, and Dwayne's access requests. Taryn cooperated before charges were finalized against her and turned over her own messages with Dwayne and Patricia, including one where Dwayne complained that I was dragging out the signature process and said that if I grew suspicious, he would pour on the husband act until she folded. By then, cruelty no longer shocked me. Pattern had taken its place. The civil case ended before the criminal one did. Faced with the recordings, the governance trail, April's affidavit, the financial documents, and Taryn's messages, Dwayne's side tried settlement first. Warren refused anything that required my silence. In the end, the court voided the prenuptial agreement under its own fraud clause and entered judgment in my favor on the core civil claims. The marriage ended exactly the way it began, under false pretenses. Dwayne lost the protections he thought he had built. Patricia was held liable alongside him. The money mattered less than the language. Fraud, deception, conspiracy. I wanted those words attached to what they had done. By the time the criminal charges were announced, Sutton Systems had stopped feeling like collateral and started feeling like home again. I threw myself into the company, but not recklessly. My team and I launched a workflow platform my mother had dreamed about for years. For the first time since her death, I did not feel like I was merely protecting what she left me. I was extending it. That mattered. So did the criminal case. Patricia took a plea when it became clear the documents and recordings left little room for fairy tales. Dwayne went to trial. I testified once calmly. I described hiding under the bed, turning on my phone recorder, hearing Patricia and Taryn discuss the plan, and later hearing Dwayne's own message about faking 6 more months. The prosecutor did not need tears. She needed clarity. Dwayne's attorney tried to recast him as a husband under stress, a son trying to save his mother, a man who said ugly things privately he never meant literally. The jury was not stupid. He was convicted on the counts that mattered most. And when the verdict was read, I did not feel triumph so much as release. Patricia went away too, though for less time. Taryn disappeared into another city with probation and a ruined name. What came after surprised me more than court ever did. Everyone talks about survival as if it is one clean climb. It is not. Some mornings I woke up powerful and focused. Other mornings I stood in my closet and could not decide whether I hated black dresses or trusted them. I worked too late for a while. Rochelle called me out every time. Winning is not the same thing as healing. She told me over dinner after I canceled on her 3 times in a row. She was right, which irritated me because she usually was. Saving my company and exposing my husband did not automatically teach my nervous system how to feel safe again. The change came in small acts. I started running in the mornings instead of reading legal filings before dawn. I kept my plans. I stopped sleeping with my phone under my pillow. 6 months after Dwayne's conviction, Sutton Systems held a major launch event for our new platform in Dallas. After my presentation, during the reception, I met Gabriel Foster near one of the demo stations. He ran an architecture firm and had the kind of warmth that did not feel rehearsed. When he asked if he could call me sometime, I told him the truth. I'm not ready for anything complicated. He nodded and said, then I'm not offering complicated. If you ever want coffee, I can do coffee. It startled me how gentle honesty could feel. He kept his word. Every few weeks he sent an article or a note. Never too much, never in a way that asked for a debt. 3 months later, I texted him first. We met for coffee near Clyde Warren Park and talked for 2 hours. He listened without studying me for weakness. That should not have felt revolutionary. After Dwayne, it did. A year after the dinner party, I walked out of the final closing hearing on the remaining civil enforcement issues and found Gabriel waiting on the courthouse steps with a cup of coffee in each hand. He did not ask how I felt before I was ready. He just stood beside me until I said, "It's over." We walked 3 blocks before he reached for my hand, slow enough for me to stop him if I wanted. I didn't stop him. Dallas was bright around us, loud and alive. My mother's company was stronger than it had ever been. Patricia had lost the gamble she built her life around. Dwayne had lost the future he thought he could steal. And I had kept the one thing they never understood from the beginning, my ability to choose. They thought grief had made me weak, because grief had made me tender. They confused love with blindness, softness with surrender. They were wrong. I did not break in ways they could profit from. I listened. I planned. I let them think I was still theirs to move. Then I ended them with their own words, kept my life, and walked into the next chapter on my own terms. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.